If we're going to do this real questioning, this bringing an identity shift to our partner, one of the things we get to do, and this is awesome, this is actually really, really fantastic, we get to make visible what has been invisible up till now. And that's not about immediately jumping into the dating pool. That is not about all of a sudden just like upending every aspect of your relationship. That's about starting to say, wait, what are we doing? And do we both want to? And under that is probably going to be a whole bunch of how are we doing this and why are we doing this? So there's a lot of new conversations that we get to have. Welcome to Playing with Fire, the podcast for people who are ready to custom build their love.
We're talking about non-monogamy, however you design it, as an individuation opportunity.
Want to leave the default and make your life spectacularly you? You're in the right place. Hey, Ken, we have a listener question that I know you've heard before, I've heard before, which makes sense because when people are trying something new, they're going to ask some people who've already been down the road, right?
That's a good start.
That's a good start. Okay. Yeah. It's in some ways a simple question, and in other ways, maybe the most consequential feeling thing someone could ask about their relationship. Here's how it went. I've just realized that I may be polyamorous, but I'm married in a long-standing monogamous relationship. I know I made a commitment to monogamy, but we've also been pretty non-traditional in other ways, and we followed a non-standard path in other ways, and then monogamy happened. We never really talked about it, but we've been doing it for a long time. So what should I do now?
Well, that's a good question. It can be a very, very tender and confusing spot to be in. Good to have somebody else to talk to.
It can. So this is a tricky spot for anyone to find themselves in, because what I hear here is a question of identity shift, right? Like right down at the core. I've experienced an identity shift, an awakening to something about me. So here we are talking on a podcast literally titled Playing with Fire, subtitle Non-Monogamy and Individuation. So individuation is the ongoing unfolding of your psyche, continually becoming more and more yourself. As we do that, we're going to be shedding the layers that are kind of stuck to us, the roles and robes we've been asked to wear. And monogamy is one of those things that sometimes all of a sudden becomes very obvious. Oh, I put this on because I thought it was the only thing I could do, or I put it on because it seemed like the right fit, or because everybody else was doing it. So it's not at all unusual. And in fact, I was in exactly this place 16 plus years ago when I didn't know any other way. I'd been with my partner since we were in high school. Nobody had presented any other options, and I'd never seen any, and I'd never even heard of any until all of a sudden I had. And the second I did gain that language, whoa, yeah, I felt so much like, oh my gosh, that's me. I felt the way the resonance was like, oh, that describes how I experience the world. What do I do now?
What do I do now? Yeah, because you feel like I feel like you just walked into class. Everybody else is wearing the school uniform. You got a t-shirt on.
Yeah.
Like, well, this is comfortable, but what do I do?
Yeah. There's a lot of psychological challenges under the surface here. Also a lot of big relational challenges, because this person's describing being in a long-standing monogamous commitment, and even even an unconscious monogamous commitment, as in we didn't really talk about it, we just did it. Right. It's still a commitment. So we got to deal with this reality. And I just want to frame this up so that we know we're coming from very different perspectives, because you were not inherently with the monogamy.
I wasn't. It's one of we have different experiences, and yours is more along the lines of someone who's been monogamous for a while and is suddenly, for whatever reason,
aware.
The idea of non-monogamy has bubbled up to consciousness. You're like, that could be for me.
It's very different from you, who I experience as someone who always thought monogamy was like just one of it, like it was just an option. Because you seem to think a lot of things that humans do are just options for people.
Why,
I
yes,
mean
I
that
am an asshole.
no, I mean that in a loving way. You
Well, no,
appear
it's
to
true.
take seriously that, like, well, you're a human. You're like, and humans are very diverse. You live in multiplicity really well. And so even though you were adhering to some mononorms,
Yeah.
you didn't pick them up and just like put them on as like, well, this is my costume and this is what I'm wearing forevermore. So there's a lot more flexibility built into the foundation of your relationships. And how I know this is when I fell in love with you, I went directly to your wife. That was my very first stop. And I just told her because I was all freaked out. And she was like, oh, that's fine. That's fine. We're not doing that monogamy thing. So whatever. It had never occurred to me that some people just had flexibility in their
Mhm.
thinking around this, that they weren't also being super loud and proud about. You were just kind of like, it was just built into the circuitry, the underpinnings of your relationship. But for a lot of people, the the foundations of the relationship are, if we haven't completely discussed and described doing something different, then we are doing the default societal thing.
Mhm.
And that is, I think, the heart of why this question is both challenging and common. It's just not uncommon, not in my world, anyways. Because faced with new knowledge about yourself, who do you want to tell more than the people you care about? Probably your partner. You
Right.
want to tell them about you, but this calls into question this commitment to the monogamous norms.
And it can be a tender thing to bring up then because, well, so okay, I'm considering this. I see this. I wonder what they're going to think.
Right. And we've
Dicey
talked
moment.
about this before, how for some people, this is so scary that they'll think about it for years or
Yeah,
decades
right.
before they actually bring it to their partner. And for other people, they find themselves really stuck in the question of when's the right time. And I just want to say there is no right time. There are some wrong times. There are
Yeah.
some very, like, please don't bring this up while you're driving. I don't, I
Nope.
like,
Right.
it's just, I want people to actually be safe. This is big information for a lot of people. And the longer you have been operating under a monogamous paradigm, the bigger the information this is probably going to feel like.
Yeah.
So I would not recommend bringing this up while you are operating a motor vehicle or
Or
while you are doing other sensitive things that could cause harm.
yeah, with
So,
if you don't both have access to regulation tools, to the ability to calm down, um, get yourself back together. Like I wouldn't want to do this trapped in an elevator either. Like I can't leave. I don't want to have
yeah,
this conversation anymore.
yeah, absolutely. So now, okay, there's a conversation to be had here. Let's define a few terms, shall we? Just because people who are listening to this may not know all the language yet. That's fair. It's okay not to know all the language. So just some high level language. Not consensual non-monogamy or non-monogamy or ethical non-monogamy. All of these are used as umbrella terms to describe a lot of different ways that you could have a relationship that does not adhere to the monogamous norms. Um, that said, how people live this out can be vastly different.
Oh yeah.
Polyamory is usually described as many loves, right? The capacity to have multiple simultaneous, caring, invested relationships. And then there's lots and lots of other words. We have a whole episode on the language of non monogamy. So we won't go into all of it, but I bring this up because the monogamous norm, right? The idea that there is one particular way for relationships to be structured and held, and that includes two people, a dyad, and specifically two people who make a commitment to each other. And that commitment can look a lot of different ways, right? You can be in a monogamous dyad that is still casually dating. You're not even particularly deeply dating. You can be a monogamous dyad that has a lifelong commitment. You've bought property together, you've raised children, you've made businesses. there's a lot of gray zone
Yeah.
in
Just like non-monogamy, there are people do it a bunch of different ways.
right. And the tricky part about like the mono norms is we tend, like culturally, to think that we all describe monogamy the same. But when I get in as a researcher, when I go and I actually have research interviews with people and I ask them to describe what monogamy looks like for them and how monogamous, like what their understanding of the meaning of monogamy, they really struggle as individuals. They often have really struggled in the interview to name what it is that they mean. And so frequently I find people are in this zone that we might call the gray zone or the wiggle room zone, where people are like, well, I've discovered an identity shift in myself. And so they start shifting their monogamous identity to make more space for themselves before even dealing with the fact that, yep, and you have a commitment. And that commitment probably has a whole bunch of implicit, unspoken, but very real
Yeah.
um, presumptions that you have built a life on. So we talk on the show a lot about making everything explicit. The reason I'm bringing this up is if you have spent a long time building history with someone and you haven't built it on very explicit conversations about how your monogamy operates and how your relationship operates and how you revisit things, then welcome. You're in it now
Yeah.
because we can't avoid these conversations while also engaging in really being forthcoming with our identity shifts in making this paradigm shift visible.
Well, sure. Because okay, I'm feeling an identity shift. I'm looking to make a paradigm shift. I have a sense of maybe where I'm going, but where did I come from? Like where am I right now? And understanding that can be very challenging if like me, most of my even though I had thought of polyamory right along, non-monogamy right along, I nonetheless was completely entrenched in this marriage, in this monogamous seeming marriage, that I wasn't even aware of all of the things that I was just taking for granted as part of the relationship that were
Yeah.
going to change.
Yes. So
Yeah.
you had already been doing non-monogamy, but you had been doing it inside the monogamous paradigm.
Yes, that's right.
So
Mhm.
y'all, hang on a
Yeah,
second.
here we
Buckle
go.
up. The monogamous paradigm and the non-monogamous paradigm aren't just defined by behavior,
Mhm.
right? Like because cheating operates with multiple partners, but inside a monogamous framework. Because in a non monogamous framework, cheating has a slightly different definition. The
Yeah,
definition is being lied to about the qualities or quantities of your relationship. But the actual fact of having multiple partners, that's okay.
right.
In a monogamous framework, cheating is defined as having multiple partners. So the behavior. So Ken, you just described a situation where the behaviors that you were engaging in were they were fine because the rule of your quasi monogamy was we just don't talk about it.
Yes. Continue to look monogamous
Continue
under
to,
every
yeah,
possible circumstance.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I bring this up because I think we sometimes lose track of the fact that our monogamy is specific to our dyad, and we need to actually make that visible along the way. If we're going to do this real questioning, this bringing an identity shift to our partner, one of the things we get to do, and this is awesome. This is actually really fantastic. We get to make visible what has been invisible up till
Yeah.
now. And that's not about immediately jumping into the dating pool. That is not about all of a sudden just like upending every aspect of your relationship. That's about starting to say, wait, what are we doing? And do we both want to? And under that is probably going to be a whole bunch of how are we doing this? And why are we doing this? So there's a lot of new conversations that we get to have. And all of that is also sitting next to the when people say to me, I think I'm polyamorous, I'm like, cool, me too. I am oriented polyamorously.
Mm.
For me, that feels like it's baked into me. It's how I am. I can, though, behave monogamously. And so from that perspective, I would say I could consider myself ambiamorous because I can happily behave um, as a person with only one partner. But I just don't feel any need to. It doesn't work very well for the people I tend to like. So I don't. Lots and lots of people are polyamorous. They feel that innate polyamory within them and choose not to have more than one partner because it doesn't fit into their life
Yep.
or because they're busy or because they haven't found any additional partners yet.
Yep.
So I just want to,
Going back to your behavior, your actions doesn't actually qualify or disqualify you from this paradigm shift,
yeah, and from an identity.
from an identity. Mhm.
And this can be helpful because also it can take some of the pressure off. Because if you feel like you have to perform your non monogamy, like if you feel like the way you'll know that you're polyamorous is to have multiple partners immediately,
Mhm.
that can feel like, oh, okay, I gotta go do it. And we rush, and probably make some pretty big mistakes along the way because we don't even know what we're rushing toward
Yeah.
and we don't know what exactly we're leaving. We haven't made that all visible yet.
Yeah.
When another way to come at this is to look at where have I been? What is my monogamy? And this is a process. It's a process where we're crossing a whole bunch of thresholds. Identity shift is amazing, right? It's fantastic. And there aren't a lot of places where we actually consciously think about the identity shifts that happen in our relationships. But we are going to change. Humans change. And the idea that our relational needs and desires will stay the same for all of our adult life is pretty wild when you
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah. There's a lot of changes available
Yeah.
throughout our adult life, and any one of them could have an impact on how
Yeah.
you perceive that.
There's a great quote from Jung. He says, "We cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning." And I mean, that's from Collected Works 8. It's pithy, it's
He
cute, it's
had a
very
way with words.
Instagrammable,
Yeah.
but really just we're going to change. And we built a life. So how we do that change, we it can be it can be additive, it can be collaborative with our partners. I didn't know what I was doing, and I wouldn't recommend anyone engage in what I engaged in. If you have a choice, I didn't know what I was doing, and what I did was just like innocently, sort of naively said, "Oh, I'm non monogamous and I have a crush on someone," and my then partner had no idea what to do with this. And thus began a, a several weeks turning into several months divorce that like neither of us was prepared for. And we didn't even know, even as we were going through the divorce process, I'm not sure we even knew what we were divorcing from
Mm,
because we never slowed down enough to say, wait, what are we doing now? How does it fit? How does it not fit?
right.
And
That's
where do we want to go from there? And that's what I would wish for. I would wish for myself if I could go back and tell my 32-year-old self something to do. I would say slow down, like really be with what is here. Ask, like, find out what questions to ask, and then take decisive action. Because I don't regret the decisive action, but I didn't give myself any time to breathe with the discomfort of being neither here nor there. Because this is a great time of liminal space.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's a well, I've just brought the concept of non-monogamy into my monogamous relationship, but
Yeah.
we're not non-monogamous anymore, yet. And monogamy is now in a different spot because it's now in it's sitting there next to non-monogamy. That didn't used to be the case, and now it is. And I don't know what happens now. That
Yes.
liminal space starts right then. As soon as the conversation starts, it's no longer clear where what exactly is possible and what you're doing, um and I think that the 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 knowing of what we're doing right now, so valuable, so like fundamental to knowing what you're going to do with this new paradigm that you may or may not move toward. But
Yes.
you got to know where you are now before you know which way to go.
Yeah. I so you were a great you were a great first person for me to partner with. As time went on, I learned that I needed to slow down in my partnerships, in every one of my partnerships, all my friendships. I needed to slow down and let myself be in the betwixt and between. So we use the word liminal a whole bunch, and we use that word quite a bit, but let's define it. Liminal.
Twixt in between is great.
Yeah, it's well, liminal means that it's threshold.
Yep.
It comes from the Latin limen, meaning threshold, and the experience of being neither in the old nor yet in the new. There's this time and space between. And to be in liminal space, I know I used to get really mad about the word liminal. We have a whole episode on liminality because I used to get so mad at it because I just wanted it to be over. I was like,
Yeah.
it's a threshold. I just want to cross it. That's not how liminal space works.
Yeah.
It's more like a long, winding hallway with unknown twists and turns in it, and you don't know how long you're going to be in there. But there are things you can do in the liminal space that can make it feel more meaningful, that can infuse the experience of being in this in between. And one of the things is a conscious slowing down. Another word saying, so this is a disruption. If I am bringing this to my partner, we have an actual we have a guide or a guided conversation that you and I recorded. So if you're scared to bring this conversation to a partner, we even
And we
did a
have a little
walkthrough
model for you.
of the
Mhm.
conversation. So we'll put the easy conversation guide in the notes to this, but you're about to introduce a disruption. So look around, look to your right and left. How's the rest of the stress level in your life? It's never going to be perfect. Do not wait for a perfect moment. But I once had somebody do this in the 8.5 month of a pregnancy. It was an interesting
It's an
choice.
interesting choice.
It was an interesting choice. It made for a very long process because then they needed to kind of pause everything. And yeah, it's not uncommon for people to bring this up when they've just gone through another change. So it's not uncommon for me to hear from people who just, say, deconstructed from a high demand religion, or they have just moved across the country, or changed their job, or experienced a loss through death. Because while you're already feeling disruption, it's not unusual to be like, okay, we're going to look at all sorts of stuff.
Yep. Yeah. Well, since everything's kind of up in the air, let's just start messing with things. Yeah.
And that may or may not be the right move for you.
Mhm.
But if you're in this moment, so this person describes, the question asker described like, well, we're in this monogamous marriage, but they didn't give us any other details about what else. What's the stress level like right
Yep.
now? Do they have some solid ground for having a conversation? Are they already like, are there other conversations about how life goes? Do they have, in other words, meta communication going on?
Mhm.
Do you talk about how you talk? Do you talk about the meta level of your relationship, or do you pretty much are you down in the weeds, like talking about what's for dinner and who's getting the kids off to school? Because if you haven't introduced this more like a 50,000 foot view of the relationship, if you haven't developed the capacity to talk about your relationship this way, this is going to be a bigger lift, right? So that's okay. That doesn't mean you can't do it, but maybe slow down your expectations for what happens next.
Yeah. And so if you can slow down, if you can take stock of your overall stress level, something else to look for is what's your community like?
Yeah.
Who else can you talk about this topic? Not just your general community, but who in your community would be open to a conversation about non-monogamy
Yeah. And
to that level of disruption,
for a lot of people, the answer is no one.
right?
I can't talk about this.
It is.
You can absolutely join us at a Playing with Fire Ask Me Anything call.
Sure. Yeah.
That's a place. And there are other non monogamous communities. And sometimes there can be an opportunity to talk about this with a community that's used to disruption in other ways. They're used to
Oh,
being at the
yeah.
edge of other topics. But I'd like to also mention that as you bring this topic up within yourself, there often people get torn in two directions. They're on the one hand, they're terrified and really nervous about like, oh my gosh, am I gonna mess with everything? And on the other hand, they're like, I want it to be perfect, and I can see the future we could have, and I can see how it'll have more love, and we'll have more sexual play, and we'll have more. And the reality, of course, is in the mess of it in the middle. It's gonna be yes, both of those extremes, but
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot that's just kind of in the middle and you don't really know. And that's perfectly reasonable because we don't even know what it is that you want yet.
Yep.
Non-monogamy is such a broad, there's so much space to play here. Like we don't know which direction you'll go.
Yeah.
But there is something important. And we've talked about it on this show before, so we'll link um, the episode talking about the grief of relationship change.
Right.
All relationships are going to go through change, and being able to actively grieve and mourn the loss of not only what was, right, because what was, so that might be monogamy, but also the loss of not like, oh, I don't even get to just not know about non-monogamy anymore.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't get to be in that sort of innocent
Yep.
stage of I don't even know this, and also the loss of the imagined future. And that this grieving, I find often the person who's feeling really excited about bringing up polyamory, they aren't as in touch with the grief as the person who's being brought the idea of polyamory. Right? So you have
Right.
two different positions here. And it's so important for in that dyad both people to face the grief of change. And it can be really hard to face the grief of change if you're focused on getting more and having more of what you want.
Yeah.
And I definitely fell into that trap. I didn't fully understand all the things that I was going to have to readjust, all the ways I was going to have to restructure the meaning making in my life, all the ways I was going to have to change the practicalities of my life in order to make space for multiple partners. And I didn't give myself very much time to adjust to that new reality. So I rushed past the grief, which meant about 9, 10, 11, about 11 months later, the grief all came rushing in.
Right.
Just like,
It
tidal
doesn't go
wave.
away. It's
Yes.
just been deprioritized. And
Yeah. And I was
it,
the initiating partner, and I still had to deal with it. It's so important. So when I say deal with it, I mean proactive acknowledgement of the loss on multiple levels and then allowing the mourning activities to move through your body. So
right.
we'll link to a separate episode because this is absolutely not optional. It is a piece of the exploration.
Imagination is a big part of all of this.
It is.
It's yours and your partners, which is why it's so helpful to know exactly where you are in your current relationship.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, when we first started our significant relationship here beyond the
Our
mono
post
paradigm,
just friendship
post just
relationship.
friendship, yep. I had no idea what your level of imagination was. Like I didn't know how likely you were to easily imagine a different future, and you didn't.
Imaginative flexibility
Mhm.
is not everybody's strong suit.
Yeah,
And it definitely imaginative flexibility is so helpful
yep.
when you're trying to move paradigms.
And understanding your own and your partner's imaginative flexibility will help you have more success in the conversations.
And some of us too, we seek some of us seek a lot of novelty and a lot of like we
Mhm.
want a lot of change, and some of us seek a lot of predictability. And those aren't right or wrong ways to be. But in this particular exploration, when one person is bringing polyamory in, and you just brought into the room, a whole lot more questions than you brought answers.
Yeah, and
And So I have the question. One of the things I would ask this person back is, what does polyamory mean for you right now? What do
Oh,
you?
right.
What is your
Mhm.
imagination of your future polyamorous life? How would you like it to go? Even if you don't know whether you could get it, even if you have no idea how to get there, what do you imagine? From there are a ton of other questions to dive into. But if your answer is, I don't know, I would stay there I would stay
Yep.
there and in the imagination for a bit, feel into it, read some memoirs about non monogamy, read Entwined by Alex Alberto,
Things
or
to expand
yeah,
your imagination and to get you more questions to ask.
yeah, questions to be with for yourself. I, so maybe we should also just before I don't want to miss this, adding the practicality to, we've talked about slowing down and creating a safer space to have a conversation about a polyamory shift, a shift in identity, but also communicating carefully,
Oh, yeah.
thoughtfully,
Mhm.
mindfully. um, the way I communicated my internal identity shift was so thoughtless. And it was thoughtless from a very naive place. I did not understand what I was bringing in, but still, I wish I had thought to to really just imagine into my partner's shoes. Like, what could this be like? Because I skipped a couple of things, and one of them was really naming, like, I am experiencing an interchange, and I don't know how this is going to land for you, but I would like to share with you how I'm experiencing this shift. Would you be willing to share this conversation with me, to be in this conversation?
Yeah.
And with that careful communication, pull back the presumption that there is one way to be that's better or worse, right? And just be with the messy in between. um, and this could get hard, because if your partner has not, they weren't prepared, they hadn't had any thoughts about this, if they flip out, right? And they immediately are like, "Wait, but we made a plan, we made a promise to each
Yeah.
other." It's going to feel like betrayal to them. So this is where we come back to that I language, and like, I am experiencing something that I don't even understand yet. I'm working with this, and I would like to talk with you about that. But I understand that this is my experience and it may be very different from yours, and to actually make space for there to be a conversation about betrayal. And this is where I find many people really need a counselor, a therapist,
Right.
a coach,
Yeah.
someone who's skilled at holding space for this perceived betrayal. Because betrayal doesn't just start with action. And this is where this was my big mistake. I assumed that because I'd taken no action that was outside of my monogamous expectations, I'd done nothing that we hadn't talked about, that wasn't totally part of our experience. It was the idea. The betrayal, sensation of betrayal that my husband at the time expressed was, I didn't, I didn't even know that, I didn't know that my understanding of monogamy could ever be shifted. He felt like he'd had the rug pulled out from under him. So making space for that betrayal to coexist with a new discovery of self identity. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not.
No, because
It's,
you each had your narratives started to diverge. Your
yeah,
story about what your relationship was and could be um, started to look different,
yeah,
and that can be very disruptive. Which is why it's so beneficial to come into it with very ease into the conversation. And I would recommend lots of questions, lots of discovery questions about. So, what have you ever thought of?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
things to,
Open ended space.
because very often, and we've seen it multiple times, where one partner has stepped into, oh, I think I'm starting to think about non-monogamy now. That didn't happen instantly. They had a ramp up period of whatever it was for them.
Yeah.
When they bring it to their partner, if they don't give their partner a similar ramp up period, but instead just are like, bang, it's here, that's very disorienting.
Yeah. And that's where I feel there can be so much pressure to like, I've seen a lot of people, and maybe this, the question asker here may have been in this spot where they've tried to figure it all out. Like, I'll
Mm.
figure out how polyamory works, and then I'll bring a plan to my partner.
Yeah.
But there is no such thing,
Yep.
right? We're never going to figure it out and then present it to someone else. This kind of paradigm shift is something, yes, you can undertake as an individual, absolutely. And you can unpack your mononorms and deconstruct monogamy in your life as an individual. But as soon as you bring it into the dyad, we need to also do that within the space between you.
Yep.
And yeah, if I could go back and do it over again, what I would love is to have asked a lot more questions and slowed down enough to be in those conversations without trying to rush to action.
Yeah.
And this is hard. And I found myself in this spot too, but I already had somebody in mind, somebody I wanted to become closer to when I figured out that polyamory was for me. That confluence made it harder. It really did, because I wanted to rush toward this experience that I was imagining would be fun and
Yep.
playful and would be enriching and enlivening. Meanwhile, my partner was only feeling the loss and not feeling how this could be enriching. He didn't have anything to really like anchor to for the idea of, yes, this could be this, yeah, this could be the closest he could get is, we'd had a few little experiences of like dancing and maybe kind of getting a little bit of intimate energy going with someone. He just didn't have the imaginal space.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I had recognized that making imaginal space could also help me. I was rushing to action because it felt so urgent.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Yeah.
a few months down the road, yeah, I had rushed myself too. It wasn't just
Yeah.
him.
Yep.
I had also rushed myself in trying to get the yummy treat. I had not eaten any of my broccoli. I had not paid attention to the
Uh-huh.
questions I should have asked myself too. And this is not to say that there's one perfect amount of time, but a few weeks is not a lot of time. Even if you say, we're great communicators. Yep, but you haven't communicated about this yet.
Yeah.
So
And
rushing to action, is always on my mind. Go ahead, Ken.
well, I was going to say, so you've described the transition time and the need for um, care of both of you as you go into it. And I want to say that while I didn't have that kind of transition in my first marriage, all of the things that you're talking about needed to have been part of how we were doing non-monogamy,
Mm,
but we didn't do them.
yeah.
I say needed to, in order for us to continue to co-create and collaborate on our relationship, we needed to be talking about what we were doing, asking questions of each other about how everything was going on. We didn't do any of that.
Right. So
And the
in order
result
to
was
have a
very
conscious
similar.
yeah, in order to have a conscious relationship, you would
Yeah.
have had to make it conscious.
Would have had to be
You would yeah.
conscious in it. Yeah,
Yeah, but
totally.
the thing is, and back then, I remember looking at your marriage, and we and me, the people around you, we thought, oh, they get along so well, but you
Yeah.
were getting along by not talking about
Right.
the things.
Yeah. By avoiding the things that we might not get along about.
And I had been going through my marriage, bringing up a lot of uncomfortable things, but never making space for us to actually figure out, does this work?
Mhm.
Does this work to sit with the discomfort of maybe it doesn't?
Yeah.
But life is often contradictory and paradoxical.
Yes.
We can absolutely long for stability and security at the same time that we long for novelty. It's humans are messy this way. If you find yourself in this position of, I think I've discovered my identity. My identity is aligned with polyamory. Or, I've heard about non monogamy and philosophically, I just really align with this. Okay, great. What do you want to do from here? Like, what is it for you?
Yep.
And how much of that is going to be about like making your life actually feel better for you across the board, not just getting more gratification right now, but yeah, are you willing to have those conversations that have been put off for a long time? Are you ready to bridge the gap between the way that you communicate now and a new way of communicating where we talk about things that the monogamous paradigm just doesn't make space for, like attraction to other people and
Right. Yep.
desire for multiplicity and sexual needs that can be only fulfilled by other people. Yeah, like you got to make new space. So this episode is also bringing me, it really brings to mind a lot about unpacking mononorms. I think we should do a
Sure.
follow up episode
Yeah,
on that because we're,
absolutely.
we're too deep into it.
Yeah.
Because remember, you don't have to leave you don't have to leave your monogamous reality to unpack and really look at all of your mononorms.
Yep.
And that would be another important part of this puzzle. So yeah, what do you say?
Let's get to
Add on
that.
in
Yeah.
another one? Okay. We talk to you all the time. It is absolutely imperative to me that we get to hear from you as well.
Yes, please.
So we'd love to invite you to join us. Join Ken and I. We're holding monthly Ask Me Anythings. You can show up, bring your questions from podcast episodes, from your relationships, bring questions about non monogamy, about individuation, about relationship skills. We would love to share space with you. We're hosting these AMAs free of charge for our podcast listeners. You are the Playing with Fire community, and it matters a ton to us that we connect with you directly. So
Oh,
go,
I would so love to hear your questions and it'd be so awesome.
yeah. Go to joliehamilton.com/AMA and you'll find a way to sign up real quick and get an invitation to join us in a small group where we're going to get together and talk about all things non monogamy, individuation, and relationships.